The spaceport on Velthara Prime buzzed with activity as thousands of beings from across the galaxy moved through its massive corridors. Ships of every size and design descended from the purple sky, their engines roaring as they touched down on designated landing pads. Among the crowd, a human named Marcus Chen walked with the confident stride of someone who had seen countless worlds and feared none of them. Marcus wore a simple gray jacket over dark pants, his only visible wealth being a small silver pendant around his neck. His face showed the weathered lines of a seasoned traveler, someone who had spent decades moving between star systems. He carried a single worn backpack over his shoulder, looking more like a wandering scholar than the billionaire he actually was. The Veltharan Empire controlled this sector of space with an iron fist. Their royal family had ruled for 3,000 years, maintaining order through strict laws and an elite guard force known throughout the galaxy for their brutality. The purple-skinned Veltharans stood nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed with an inner light. They viewed most other species as inferior, especially humans, whom they considered primitive newcomers to the galactic stage. Marcus approached the main checkpoint where travelers were required to present their credentials. The line moved slowly as royal guards inspected each person with meticulous care. These guards wore ornate armor that gleamed like polished obsidian, and each carried plasma weapons capable of disintegrating a person in seconds. They took their duty seriously, and many travelers whispered prayers as they approached. Standing at the checkpoint was Commander Jalthor, a decorated officer who had served the royal family for 40 years. His armor bore the golden insignia of the Emperor's personal protection unit, marking him as one of the most powerful individuals on the planet. Jalthor took pride in his position and enjoyed reminding lesser beings of their place in the cosmic hierarchy. When Marcus reached the front of the line, he handed over his identification chip without a word. Jalthor scanned it with his upper right hand while his other 3 hands rested on various weapons. The scanner beeped, displaying Marcus's travel history and clearance codes. Everything appeared to be in order, but Jalthor's glowing eyes narrowed as he studied the human. "A human traveling alone," Jalthor said, his voice deep and rumbling. "How unusual. Most of your kind move in groups, afraid of the wider galaxy. What business brings you to the heart of the Veltharan Empire?" Marcus met the commander's gaze without flinching. "I'm here to see the crystalline gardens. I've heard they're the most beautiful in the known universe." Jalthor's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "The gardens are reserved for citizens of the Empire and honored guests. Tourists, especially human tourists, are not permitted." "My credentials show I have an access pass," Marcus replied calmly, "purchased legally through the proper channels." The commander checked the scanner again, his eyes flashing with irritation. The human was correct. Somehow he had obtained one of the rare visitor passes that granted access to restricted areas. Jalthor disliked being proven wrong, particularly by members of species he considered inferior. "Your papers may be in order, but that does not mean you are welcome here," Jalthor said, stepping closer to Marcus. His massive frame towered over the human, casting a shadow across him. "Perhaps you should reconsider your visit. Humans who wander where they are not wanted often meet with unfortunate accidents." Marcus remained perfectly still, his expression unchanged. "Is that an official warning, Commander? Or a personal threat?" The question hung in the air between them. Other travelers in line had stopped moving, watching the confrontation with wide eyes. Several aliens backed away slowly, not wanting to be caught in whatever was about to happen. Royal guards were known for their temper, and challenging one was considered suicidal. Jalthor's 4 hands clenched into fists. In his decades of service, few beings had dared to speak to him with such casual disrespect. The human's calm demeanor infuriated him more than any insult could have. He wanted to see fear in those eyes, to watch the primitive creature realize its mistake. "It is whatever I say it is," Jalthor growled, leaning down until his face was inches from Marcus's. "You humans think you are special because you survived your planet's wars and joined the galactic community. But you are nothing. Primitives playing at civilization." Marcus took a slow breath, his eyes never leaving the commander's glowing gaze. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but clear enough for everyone nearby to hear. "And you Veltharans think you're superior because you were born on a powerful world. But superiority isn't inherited, Commander. It's earned." The crowd gasped. No one spoke to a royal guard like that. Several aliens began recording the exchange on their devices, sensing that something historic was about to happen. Jalthor's eyes blazed brighter and his mandibles spread wide in a display of aggression. "You dare?" Jalthor roared, his voice echoing through the checkpoint. "I could have you arrested for insulting an officer of the Empire. I could have you thrown into a cell and forgotten for the rest of your miserable life." Marcus shifted his backpack slightly, his stance remaining relaxed. "You could try." Those two words carried a weight that made Jalthor pause. There was something in the human's tone, a certainty that suggested he was not bluffing. The commander's combat instincts, honed over decades of warfare, suddenly screamed a warning. This was not an ordinary tourist. This was someone dangerous, but pride overrode caution. Jalthor had built his reputation on never backing down, never showing weakness. He could not allow a human to disrespect him in front of hundreds of witnesses. His hand moved toward his sidearm, though he did not draw it. The threat was clear. "Last chance, human. Apologize and leave Velthara Prime immediately, or face the consequences." Marcus looked at the commander for a long moment, then did something no one expected. He smiled. It was not a friendly smile or a nervous one. It was the smile of someone who had been in this exact situation before and knew exactly how it would end. Then, with deliberate slowness, Marcus gathered saliva in his mouth and spat directly in Commander Jalthor's face. The terminal fell absolutely silent. Even the ambient noise of the spaceport seemed to fade away. Jalthor stood frozen, the human spit running down his armored faceplate. His mind could not process what had just happened. In 3,000 years of Veltharan history, no one had ever committed such an offense against a royal guard. Marcus stood waiting, his hands at his sides, completely calm. Around them, the crowd remained perfectly still, barely breathing. Some had their recording devices focused on the scene, knowing they were witnessing something that would be talked about across the galaxy. Jalthor's hands trembled with rage as he slowly reached up and wiped the spit from his face. Commander Jalthor's roar shook the entire checkpoint. His forearms shot out, grabbing Marcus by the throat and lifting him off the ground. The human's feet dangled in the air, but his expression remained eerily calm. Other royal guards rushed forward, surrounding them with weapons drawn, ready to assist their commander in dealing with this unprecedented insult. "You have signed your death warrant, human," Jalthor bellowed, his grip tightening around Marcus's throat. "I will make an example of you that will be remembered for generations." Marcus did not struggle against the hold. Instead, he reached slowly into his jacket pocket. Immediately, a dozen plasma rifles aimed at him, their energy cores humming with lethal power. But Marcus moved with such deliberate care that even the trigger-happy guards hesitated. He pulled out a small metallic card and held it up so Jalthor could see it. The commander's eyes focused on the card, and his expression shifted from rage to confusion. The card was made of pure platinum, etched with symbols that only a few beings in the galaxy would recognize. At its center was a holographic seal that rotated slowly, displaying an emblem that made Jalthor's blood run cold. It was the personal seal of the Galactic Commerce Authority, but not just any seal. This was a sovereign trader's mark, one of only 12 in existence. Beings who carried such marks controlled economies of entire star systems. They were untouchable by local law, answerable only to the highest levels of galactic government. Jalthor's hands loosened slightly, though he did not release Marcus completely. "This is a forgery." "It must be." Marcus spoke with some difficulty, his voice strained but steady. "Your armor has authentication scanners in the fingertips. Check it yourself." With his lower left hand, Jalthor activated the scanner built into his gauntlet. He pressed it against the platinum card, and a holographic display appeared in the air between them. The display showed Marcus's full credentials, verified by 17 different security systems simultaneously. The data was impossible to fake. Marcus Chen was not just wealthy. He was one of the 12 richest beings in the known galaxy. His net worth exceeded the gross domestic product of most civilized worlds. He owned mining operations on 40 planets, controlled 6 major shipping lanes, and had financial interests in technology that kept entire sectors running. Governments borrowed money from him. Military forces used weapons his companies developed, but the information that made Jalthor's hands go numb was a single line at the bottom of the display. Marcus Chen held a personal friendship status with the Veltharan Emperor himself. They had met 30 years ago during a trade negotiation, and the Emperor had been so impressed with Marcus's integrity that he had invited him to visit Velthara Prime as an honored guest whenever he wished. Jalthor released Marcus immediately, letting him drop to the ground. The human landed on his feet, adjusting his jacket calmly as if nothing had happened. He tucked the platinum card back into his pocket and looked up at the commander with the same neutral expression. "Now," Marcus said, his voice quiet but carrying clearly in the silent terminal. "Would you like to reconsider who is primitive?" The other royal guards stood frozen, their weapons still raised but their confidence shattered. They had just witnessed their commander physically assault one of the most powerful individuals in the galaxy. The recordings of this incident were already being transmitted across the planetary network. Within hours, it would reach the Imperial Palace. Jalthor's mind raced. His career was over, possibly his life. Assaulting a sovereign traitor was a capital offense in most jurisdictions. Assaulting a personal friend of the Emperor was unthinkable. He had let his pride and prejudice blind him to the danger, and now he would pay the price. I did not know," Jalthor stammered, something he had never done in his life. "Your appearance, your manner, you looked like a common traveler." Marcus rubbed his throat where the commander's hands had gripped him. "That was intentional. I prefer to move through the galaxy without drawing attention. It allows me to see how people truly behave when they think there are no consequences." "Forgive me, sovereign traitor," Jalthor said, dropping to one knee. His pride crumbled like sand, replaced by the cold fear of someone who had just destroyed everything he had built. "I acted rashly. I allowed my prejudice to overcome my training. I beg your mercy." The other guards followed their commander's example, kneeling in a circle around Marcus. The watching crowd recorded every moment, some with expressions of shock, others with barely concealed satisfaction at seeing the arrogant royal guard humbled. Marcus looked down at the kneeling warriors, his expression unreadable. "You insulted me. You threatened me. You physically assaulted me. All because I am human, and you believe humans are beneath you." "Yes," Jalthor admitted, his voice hollow. "I was wrong. You were not just wrong, Commander. You were ignorant. Do you know why humans are considered primitive by many species?" Marcus walked slowly around the kneeling guards as he spoke. "It is because we only reached the stars 400 years ago. Other species had millions of years to develop. We are children compared to civilizations like yours." He stopped in front of Jalthor. "But do you know what humans accomplished in those 400 years? We went from barely leaving our own planet to establishing colonies on 70 worlds. We developed technology that rivals species who have had eons to perfect theirs. We survived 3 extinction-level events on our homeworld and came back stronger each time. We did in centuries what takes most species millennia." Marcus leaned closer. "You call us primitive. I call us efficient. And that efficiency comes from something your ancient empire has forgotten. Respect. We respect intelligence regardless of where it comes from. We respect courage regardless of who shows it. We respect achievement regardless of the species that accomplishes it." The terminal had filled with more onlookers now. News of the confrontation had spread through the spaceport, and beings from dozens of species had come to watch. Many of them were humans, their faces showing a mixture of pride and concern for their fellow human. Jalthor remained kneeling, unable to meet Marcus's eyes. Everything the human said was true. The Veltharan Empire had become complacent in its power, treating younger species with contempt rather than curiosity. The commander had embodied that arrogance perfectly, and now it had brought him to ruin. "I could have you arrested," Marcus continued. "I could file charges that would see you stripped of rank and imprisoned. I could demand compensation that would bankrupt your family for generations. I could make one call and the Emperor would have your head on a spike before sunset." The crowd waited, barely breathing. This was the moment that would define the story. Would the human show mercy or justice? Would he prove to be as vindictive as those who had wronged him? Or would he demonstrate the values he claimed his species held? Marcus pulled out a small medical device from his backpack and pressed it against his bruised throat. The device hummed softly, healing the damage Jalthor's hands had caused. When he spoke again, his voice was clear and strong. "But I am not going to do any of those things." Confusion rippled through the crowd. Jalthor's head jerked up, his glowing eyes wide with disbelief. "What?" "You acted on prejudice, but prejudice is taught, not born," Marcus said. "Someone taught you that humans were inferior. Your culture reinforced that belief. Today I am going to teach you something different." He gestured for Jalthor to stand. The commander rose slowly, uncertain what was happening. Marcus extended his hand in the traditional human gesture of peace. Jalthor stared at it, then slowly reached out with one of his 4 hands and grasped it. I forgive you, Commander Jalthor, not because you deserve it, but because holding anger serves no purpose. You made a mistake. You let pride and prejudice guide your actions, but mistakes are opportunities to learn. Tears formed in Jalthor's eyes, something that shocked him to his core. In 40 years of service, he had never cried. Why would you show me such mercy? I deserve punishment. Marcus smiled, and this time it was genuine. Because that is what humans do. We have been underestimated, dismissed, and attacked since we joined the galactic community. We could have responded with equal hostility. Instead, we chose to prove our worth through our actions. Today, you will remember not that a human humiliated you, but that a human showed you grace when he had every right to seek vengeance. News of the incident spread across Velthara Prime like wildfire. Within 3 hours, every major news network had picked up the story. The recordings from the spaceport showed Commander Jalthor assaulting Marcus, followed by the revelation of the human's true identity, and finally the unexpected mercy Marcus had shown. The story captivated billions of viewers across the Empire. Marcus had been escorted to a luxury hotel in the capital city by a squadron of royal guards, who now treated him with the utmost respect. They apologized profusely for their commander's behavior and offered him anything he might need. Marcus accepted their apologies gracefully and requested only one thing: a private transport to the crystalline gardens the following morning. That evening, as Marcus sat on the balcony of his suite overlooking the gleaming towers of the Veltharan capital, his communication device chimed. The holographic display showed an incoming call from someone with the highest possible security clearance. Marcus smiled and accepted the connection. The hologram that appeared before him showed a massive Veltharan wearing robes of deep purple and gold. This was Emperor Zelmaran III, ruler of the Veltharan Empire and one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. His face bore the ceremonial markings of his bloodline, and his forearms were adorned with rings that each represented a conquered system. Marcus Chen, the Emperor said, his voice warm despite the formal setting. It has been too long, my friend. Marcus bowed his head respectfully. Your Imperial Majesty, I had hoped to visit quietly, but circumstances made that impossible. The Emperor's mandibles clicked in what Marcus recognized as laughter. Quietly. You spat in the face of a royal guard commander, in the middle of the busiest spaceport on the planet. If that was your attempt at discretion, I would hate to see you trying to make a scene. He gave me little choice, Marcus replied with a slight smile. I have endured many insults while traveling, Your Majesty. Usually I ignore them. But Commander Jalthor went beyond insults. He represented everything wrong with how some species view humanity. The Emperor's expression grew serious. I have watched the recordings. Jalthor's behavior was inexcusable. He has brought shame upon the royal guard and embarrassed the Empire. I have already begun disciplinary proceedings. Marcus held up a hand. If I may, Your Majesty, I would ask you to reconsider harsh punishment. Emperor Zalmaran's eyes glowed brighter with surprise. You would defend the man who assaulted you? I would defend a soldier who made a mistake, Marcus clarified. Jalthor spent 40 years serving your empire with distinction. He fought in the border wars. He protected your family during the assassination crisis. One moment of poor judgment should not erase a lifetime of service. The Emperor leaned back in his throne, studying Marcus carefully. You humans continue to surprise me. Most species would demand blood for such an insult. Yet you ask for mercy. Marcus gazed out at the city lights below. Revenge is easy, Your Majesty. It satisfies the ego but changes nothing. I want something more valuable than Jalthor's punishment. I want his understanding. Explain, the Emperor commanded, genuinely curious. Prejudice exists because of ignorance, Marcus said. Jalthor believed humans were primitive because he had never taken the time to learn about us. He saw our short history in the stars and assumed we had nothing to offer. But if this incident teaches him to look deeper, to question his assumptions, then perhaps he will become a better leader. And if he becomes better, others will follow his example. Emperor Zalmaran was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, there was admiration in his voice. This is why I value your friendship, Marcus. You see beyond immediate satisfaction to long-term benefit. Very well. I will take your wishes into account. Jalthor will face consequences, but they will be educational rather than punitive. Thank you, Your Majesty. However, the Emperor continued, his tone becoming stern, I cannot ignore this completely. The royal guard must maintain discipline, and the public must see that justice has been served. Tomorrow, there will be a formal ceremony in the imperial palace. Jalthor will publicly apologize to you before the court. After that, he will be reassigned to a position where he can learn the values you spoke of. Marcus nodded. That seems fair. And you, my friend, will be formally recognized as an honored guest of the Empire. I should have done this years ago, but I respected your wish to travel anonymously. That luxury has ended. From tomorrow forward, every being on Velthera Prime will know who you are and what you represent. Marcus sighed but smiled. I suppose I brought that on myself. The Emperor's expression softened. Why do you travel this way, Marcus? You have wealth beyond measure. You could travel in luxury, surrounded by guards and servants. Instead, you wander alone in plain clothes, inviting exactly the kind of trouble you encountered today. Because luxury creates distance, Marcus replied. When I travel as a billionaire, people treat me as one. They show me their best behavior, tell me what they think I want to hear. But when I travel as an ordinary person, I see the truth. I see how the powerful treat the powerless. I see which cultures value compassion and which value strength. It keeps me grounded. A wise approach, the Emperor admitted. Though I would argue that spitting in a royal guard's face is an unusual method of staying grounded. Marcus laughed. That was improvisation. I needed to shock him badly enough that he would question everything about the situation. If I had simply shown him my credentials and walked away, he would have learned nothing. He would have simply been angry at being deceived. Instead, you humiliated him and then showed him mercy. You made him feel shame and gratitude simultaneously. A powerful combination. The Emperor paused. You would have made an excellent Veltheran politician. I prefer business to politics, Your Majesty. The rules are clearer. They talked for another hour, discussing trade agreements and mutual friends, laughing at shared memories from their previous meetings. When the call finally ended, Marcus felt satisfied. The incident had turned out better than he expected. Jalthor would learn and grow from this experience rather than being destroyed by it. Meanwhile, across the city, Commander Jalthor sat alone in his quarters. He had been relieved of duty pending the investigation, and his fellow guards avoided him in the corridors. His shame was total and absolute. He replayed the incident in his mind repeatedly, seeing his mistakes with painful clarity. The door chimed and Jalthor almost ignored it. But his training was too ingrained. He called for the visitor to enter. A young guard named Telvash stepped inside, her armor bearing the marks of a recent graduate from the academy. She saluted crisply. Commander, I have a message from the Emperor. Jalthor's heart sank. This was it. His execution order or his exile. Either way, his life as he knew it was over. Read it. Telvash pulled out a data pad and read aloud. Commander Jalthor, you are hereby summoned to the Imperial Palace tomorrow at midday. You will publicly apologize to sovereign traitor Marcus Chen before the assembled court. Following this, you will be assigned to the Cultural Exchange Program, where you will spend the next 3 years learning about the species you have sworn to protect. This assignment comes at the specific request of Marcus Chen, who has asked that you be given an opportunity to grow rather than be punished. Do not waste this gift. Jalthor stood frozen, unable to process what he had heard. Marcus had intervened on his behalf. The human he had assaulted, insulted, and threatened had asked the Emperor to show him mercy. It made no sense. By every law and custom he knew, Marcus should have demanded his head. Commander? Telvash looked concerned. Are you well? He saved me, Jalthor whispered. After everything I did, he saved me. The human shows great wisdom, Telvash said carefully. Perhaps that is why the Emperor values his friendship. Jalthor sank into a chair, his 4 hands covering his face. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to be truly humbled, not by defeat in battle or by superior force, but by unexpected kindness from someone he had wronged. The weight of that kindness was heavier than any punishment could have been. I called him primitive, Jalthor said, his voice breaking. I said his species was inferior, and he responded by ensuring my future rather than destroying it. What does that make me? Telvash placed a hand on her commander's shoulder. It makes you someone who has learned an important lesson, someone who can become better. That night, Jalthor did not sleep. He spent hours researching human history, learning about their struggles and triumphs. He read about their wars, their art, their philosophy. He discovered that humans had a concept called Ubuntu, an ancient philosophy meaning a person is a person through other people. The idea that individual worth came from how one treated others, not from power or status. By morning, Commander Jalthor understood what he needed to do. The ceremony would not be a formality. It would be a genuine expression of remorse and a promise to do better. Marcus Chen had given him a gift, and he would honor that gift by becoming worthy of it. The imperial palace was a marvel of architecture, built from crystalline materials that caught and refracted light in dazzling patterns. Its towers reached toward the purple sky, and gardens filled with bioluminescent plants surrounded it. Today, the palace was even more spectacular than usual, as the emperor had ordered a full ceremonial gathering for Marcus's formal recognition. Marcus arrived in a transport vehicle escorted by a full honor guard. He still wore his simple gray jacket, refusing the elaborate robes the palace staff had offered. Some things were worth compromising on, but his personal style was not one of them. The guards who escorted him had learned not to question his choices, though they exchanged puzzled glances behind his back. The throne room was enormous, capable of holding thousands of beings. Today it was filled with nobles, diplomats, military leaders, and representatives from hundreds of worlds within the empire. They stood in carefully arranged sections based on rank and species, all wearing their finest ceremonial attire. Holographic recording devices floated throughout the room, transmitting the ceremony across the empire and beyond. Marcus walked down the central aisle alone, his footsteps echoing on the polished floor. Every eye in the room followed him. Some looked at him with respect, others with curiosity, and a few with barely concealed resentment. Not everyone appreciated seeing a human elevated to such high status, but none dared show it openly. Emperor Zalmoran sat upon his throne, an imposing structure carved from a single massive crystal. His robes shimmered with embedded technology that displayed the symbols of every world in his empire. His four hands rested on the arms of the throne, and his glowing eyes watched Marcus approach with warmth. Marcus stopped at the appropriate distance and bowed deeply. "Your Imperial Majesty, I am honored by your invitation." The Emperor rose and the entire room fell silent. "Marcus Chen, you have been a friend to the Veltharan Empire for 3 decades. You have conducted trade with fairness, offered counsel with wisdom, and shown respect for our culture even when others have not. Today, we formally recognize these contributions." 2 attendants brought forward a cushion bearing a medallion of exceptional craftsmanship. It was made from the same crystalline material as the palace itself, with holographic elements that shifted to show different symbols. This was the Star of Honor, one of the highest awards the Empire could bestow on a non-citizen. For your service, your friendship, and your embodiment of the values we claim to hold dear, I present you with the Star of Honor. You are now and forever an honored guest of the Veltharan Empire, with all rights and privileges that entails. Marcus accepted the medallion and placed it around his neck. The crowd applauded, the sound rising and falling like waves. But Marcus knew this was only the beginning of the ceremony. The difficult part was yet to come. Emperor Zalmoran raised one hand and silence returned immediately. "However, this ceremony has another purpose. Yesterday, a grave injustice occurred. Commander Jalthor, step forward." From the side of the room, Jalthor emerged. He wore his full ceremonial armor, polished to perfection, but he carried no weapons. His head was bowed and his steps were slow and measured. The crowd murmured as he walked toward the throne. Many had heard rumors about what happened at the spaceport, but this was the first official acknowledgement. Jalthor stopped before Marcus and dropped to both knees, all 4 hands spread on the floor in the traditional Veltharan gesture of complete submission. "Sovereign traitor Marcus Chen, I have committed a terrible wrong against you." His voice carried clearly through the silence. "I allowed prejudice and pride to cloud my judgment. I insulted you, threatened you, and physically assaulted you. I violated every oath I have taken as a royal guard. I brought shame upon my position, my family, and my empire." Tears streamed down Jalthor's face, visible to everyone in the room and everyone watching across the galaxy. "I have spent the night learning about humanity. I read about your history, your struggles, your achievements. I learned that humans survived planetary catastrophes that would have destroyed most species. I learned that you reach the stars through determination and cooperation. I learned that you value character over birthright and merit over lineage. He looked up at Marcus, his eyes meeting the human's gaze. I learned that I was wrong about everything. You are not primitive. Your species is not inferior. If anything, humans represent what the Veltheran Empire once was and has forgotten how to be. You are explorers, innovators, and builders. You face the unknown with courage instead of contempt. Zhalthor's voice grew stronger. I beg your forgiveness not because I deserve it, but because your mercy yesterday showed me what true strength looks like. You could have destroyed me with a word, but you chose to save me instead. That choice has changed me more than any punishment could have. The throne room remained absolutely silent. Many of the assembled nobles had never witnessed such a display of genuine remorse from a royal guard commander. Some were moved by Zhalthor's words, while others were uncomfortable seeing such vulnerability from a warrior they had respected. Marcus stepped forward and extended his hand. Stand up, Commander. Zhalthor rose slowly and Marcus shook his hand firmly. Your apology is accepted, but more importantly, it is believed. I can see that you mean what you say. I do, Zhalthor said fervently. I swear by every star in the sky that I will spend the rest of my life proving it. Marcus turned to address the crowd, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast room. Let this be a lesson to everyone present. Prejudice is a disease that infects even the strongest minds. Commander Zhalthor was not evil. He was misguided. He believed what his culture taught him without questioning it. But the moment he was confronted with truth, he had the courage to change. He gestured to Zhalthor. This warrior has served the Empire with distinction for 40 years. One mistake should not erase that service. Instead, it should be seen as the beginning of a new chapter. The Emperor has wisely assigned him to the Cultural Exchange Program. There he will learn about the species he has sworn to protect. He will become a bridge between cultures instead of a wall between them. The crowd erupted in applause, though Marcus noted that some of the older nobles clapped less enthusiastically than others. Change was never universally welcome, especially among those who benefited from the status quo. Emperor Zalmoran stood once more. Well spoken, Marcus. Commander Zhalthor, you will begin your new assignment tomorrow. You will travel to human colonies, to their homeworld, and to their outposts across the galaxy. You will live as they live, learn as they learn, and understand what makes them strong. When you return 3 years from now, you will bring that knowledge back to the Empire. Zhalthor saluted sharply. It will be my honor, Your Majesty. As the formal ceremony concluded, the crowd began to disperse into smaller groups. Nobles approached Marcus to offer congratulations and seek opportunities to speak with him about various business ventures. Diplomats from other species present on Velthera Prime wanted to arrange meetings. Marcus handled them all with practiced ease, making no commitments but leaving everyone feeling heard. Later, as servants brought refreshments and the gathering transformed into a social event, a young Veltheran approached Marcus. She wore the simple robes of a scholar rather than the elaborate outfits of the nobility. Her eyes showed keen intelligence, and she carried herself with quiet confidence. Sovereign Trader Chen, may I speak with you briefly? Marcus smiled. Of course. And please, just Marcus is fine. I am Dr. Velnara, a professor of xenosociology at the Imperial Academy. I study the interactions between different species and cultures. What you did yesterday and today will be discussed in my classes for years to come. I simply responded to a difficult situation, Marcus said modestly. Dr. Velnara shook her head. You did far more than that. You demonstrated something many Veltherans have forgotten. True power lies not in domination, but in the ability to change hearts and minds. You transformed a man who hated you into someone who will dedicate years to understanding your species. She paused, choosing her words carefully. There is a growing movement among younger Veltherans who believe the Empire must change. We see what is happening across the galaxy. Younger species like humanity are innovating faster than we can keep up. Species we dismissed as primitive are forming alliances and trading networks that exclude us. The Empire is being left behind because we cling to old prejudices. Marcus listened intently. And what do you think needs to happen? We need more moments like this, Dr. Velnara said earnestly. We need our people to see that cooperation brings greater benefits than domination. We need leaders who understand that respecting other species does not diminish us. It elevates everyone. That is a dangerous position to hold openly, Marcus observed. Perhaps, she acknowledged, but necessary. The Emperor understands this, which is why he allowed this ceremony to be broadcast across the Empire. He is using your example to send a message to those who resist change. Marcus had suspected as much. Emperor Zalmaran was clever and forward-thinking. By publicly honoring a human and forcing a respected commander to apologize, he was making a statement about the direction. 3 days later, Marcus stood before an auditorium filled with over 2,000 students at the Imperial Academy. The room was designed to accommodate multiple species, with adjustable seating and environmental controls. Students from dozens of worlds sat together, their varied forms creating a tapestry of galactic diversity. Most were Veltharan, but Marcus was pleased to see representatives from many other species as well. Dr. Velnara introduced him with enthusiasm. Students, today we have an extraordinary opportunity. Sovereign Trader Marcus Chen has agreed to speak with us about human culture, galactic commerce, and the incident that has captivated our world this week. Please welcome him. The applause was thunderous. Marcus noticed that many students were recording the session and he smiled inwardly. Whatever he said here would spread far beyond this room. That was exactly what he wanted. Thank you for having me, Marcus began, his voice carried by sophisticated audio systems. I have been asked to speak about humanity, but I would rather have a conversation. I will share some thoughts and then I invite your questions, challenges, and perspectives. He walked across the stage, his manner casual and approachable. Humans joined the galactic community 400 years ago. In cosmic terms, we are infants. Most of your civilizations were exploring the stars when our ancestors were still learning to control fire. By all reasonable measures, we should be irrelevant. Yet here I am, holding one of 12 sovereign trader marks in existence, standing in the Imperial Academy of one of the galaxy's oldest empires. A murmur ran through the audience. Marcus had their attention completely. How did we get here so quickly? Some species believe humans are naturally aggressive, that we clawed our way up through violence. Others think we are lucky, that we stumbled into fortunate circumstances. Both explanations are wrong, though they contain fragments of truth. He stopped center stage. Humans succeeded because we understand one fundamental principle better than most species: the power of collective effort. We call it cooperation, collaboration, teamwork. For humans, the group's success is more important than individual glory. A Veltharan student in the front row raised one of his hands. Marcus nodded to him. Please speak. Sovereign Trader, that contradicts what we have been taught about human history. Your species has fought countless wars against itself. Your homeworld was nearly destroyed by your own conflicts. How can you claim cooperation as a defining trait? Marcus smiled. An excellent question. Yes, humans have fought brutal wars. Yes, we have made terrible mistakes. But here is what you must understand. We learned from those mistakes. Each war taught us the cost of division. Each conflict showed us the value of peace. By the time we reached the stars, we had learned to channel our competitive nature into productive directions. He activated a holographic display showing images of Earth's history. Look at our world wars. Devastating conflicts that killed millions. But what happened afterward? We created international organizations to prevent future wars. We established global trade networks. We built systems of cooperation that made war less likely. When we discovered faster-than-light travel, we were already experienced at working together across cultural boundaries. Another student spoke up, a female Veltharan with the bearing of nobility. But surely your species had advantages, special technology or unique abilities? None, Marcus replied bluntly. When we joined the galactic community, our technology was primitive by galactic standards. We had no natural advantages. What we had was adaptability and determination. We were willing to learn from every species we met. We borrowed Krilthan engine designs, adapted Veltharan communication systems, and studied Zexian agricultural techniques. We did not let pride prevent us from accepting help. He let that statement hang in the air. Many Veltharan students shifted uncomfortably, understanding the implicit comparison. The incident at the spaceport demonstrates this perfectly, Marcus continued. Commander Jalthor assumed that because humans are young, we must be inferior. He did not consider that youth might bring fresh perspectives. He did not think about what humans might have accomplished in our brief time among the stars. He judged an entire species based on a single data point. Our age. Dr. Velnara interjected from her seat. And how did you feel when he insulted you? Marcus considered the question carefully. Disappointed, not angry, disappointed. I have encountered prejudice many times during my travels, usually from species who feel threatened by human progress. But I expected better from the Veltheran Royal Guard. Your empire has stood for millennia. I thought that longevity would bring wisdom. A brave student near the back stood up. Some say you showed weakness by forgiving Commander Jalthor. They say a true leader would have demanded his punishment to establish dominance. And what do you think? Marcus asked. The student hesitated, then spoke honestly. I think you showed strength, but I'm not sure I could have done the same. Marcus nodded appreciatively. Honesty is valuable. Thank you. To answer your question directly, revenge is not strength. Revenge is the easiest response when someone wrongs you. It requires no thought, no restraint, no vision. True strength is seeing beyond the immediate offense to long-term consequences. He brought up another holographic image, this one showing a complex network. This is a map of my business holdings across the galaxy. Every point represents a partnership, a joint venture, or a trade agreement. I built this network over decades by following one principle: turn potential enemies into partners. The students leaned forward, fascinated by the intricate web of connections. In my early years of business, competitors tried to sabotage me. They spread lies about human reliability. They claimed we would abandon agreements when they became inconvenient. They said humans could not be trusted with long-term partnerships because our lives were so short. Marcus smiled at the memory. I could have fought them legally. I could have used my growing wealth to crush them. Instead, I invited them to coffee. I listened to their concerns. I acknowledged their fears. And then I proposed deals that benefited both of us. Within 5 years, my fiercest critics became my strongest advocates. A small Quiluvian student, barely visible in the back row, chirped a question in her species' musical language. The translation system rendered it in Veltheran standard. How do you maintain such extensive partnerships? Surely some fail? Many fail, Marcus admitted freely. But I do not see failure as the end. I see it as information. When a partnership does not work, I analyze why. Was it poor communication? Misaligned goals? Cultural misunderstandings? Then I apply those lessons to future ventures. Every failure makes me better at cooperation. Dr. Velnara stood up. Students, I think this is the perfect moment to discuss the broader implications. Marcus, you have built one of the largest commercial empires in the galaxy, using principles that many powerful species ignore or mock. What does that tell us about the future of galactic civilization? Marcus took a moment to gather his thoughts. This was the crucial message, the reason he had agreed to speak at the Academy. It tells us that the old model is dying, he said quietly. For millions of years, galactic civilization has been dominated by species who achieved power through military might, technological superiority, or simply being first. The Veltherans, the Krilthan Collective, the Zexian Dominion. You all built empires through strength. He looked around the auditorium, making eye contact with students throughout the room. But the galaxy is changing. There are now thousands of spacefaring species. Millions of worlds are colonized. The old empires cannot control everything anymore. The future belongs to networks, not hierarchies. To partnerships, not domination. To cooperation, not conquest. A Veltheran professor in the audience stood up, his expression stern. You speak as though the empire is obsolete. We have maintained order in this sector for 3,000 years. Without our strength, chaos would reign. Marcus met his gaze respectfully. I speak with great respect for what the empire has accomplished. But strength alone is no longer sufficient. Look at human space. We control 70 worlds, but we do not rule them. Each colony has autonomy. Each world contributes to collective defense and infrastructure, but maintains its own culture and governance. We form a federation, not an empire, and if you are attacked, the professor challenged. If a hostile force threatens your worlds, then 70 worlds respond as one, Marcus replied firmly. Because we choose to support each other, not because we are forced to. That willing cooperation is stronger than any command structure. When the Krilthan raiders attacked human colonies 15 years ago, volunteer defense forces from 40 worlds responded within a week. No one ordered them to help. They came because they believed in protecting the network they were part of. The professor sat down, looking thoughtful rather than dismissive. Marcus had made his point without attacking the empire directly. A young Veltheran female in the middle section raised her hand. Sovereign Trader, you have shown us a vision of cooperation and mutual respect. But how do we get there from here? The empire has existed for millennia with a hierarchical structure. How do we change something so deeply embedded in our culture? The session at the Imperial Academy lasted for 4 hours, far longer than originally scheduled. Students asked hundreds of questions about everything from human culture to business philosophy to interspecies diplomacy. Marcus answered each one thoughtfully, never rushing or dismissing even the most challenging inquiries. By the end, he had not just taught them about humanity, but had demonstrated human values through his actions. As the students filed out, many approached him personally. Some wanted to shake his hand, others sought advice about their future careers, and a few simply wanted to thank him for changing their perspective. Marcus gave each person his full attention, regardless of how tired he felt. Dr. Velnara waited until the last student had left before approaching him. That was remarkable. I have never seen students so engaged. You gave them something textbooks and lectures cannot provide. You gave them a living example. Marcus smiled wearily. I hope it makes a difference. It already has, she assured him. Half the students here will go on to positions of influence in the empire. Military officers, diplomats, scientists, administrators. The seeds you planted today will grow for decades. They walked together through the academy's corridors, passing laboratories and study halls where the next generation of Veltharan leaders learned their crafts. Dr. Velnara pointed out various facilities, explaining the academy's role in shaping imperial policy. You know, she said quietly as they reached a secluded garden area, there are factions within the empire that see your presence here as a threat. They believe humans are growing too powerful, too influential. They fear that the Emperor's friendship with you signals a shift away from Veltharan supremacy. Marcus was not surprised, and what do these factions plan to do about it? Nothing overt while you are on Velthara Prime. The Emperor's protection is absolute, but they will work to undermine human interests in other ways. Trade restrictions, diplomatic obstacles, subtle sabotage of joint ventures. They cannot attack you directly, so they will attack what you represent. Let them try, Marcus said calmly. Humans have faced opposition since we reached the stars. We have learned to navigate hostility without responding in kind. For every door these factions close, we will open 2 others. Dr. Velnara looked at him with open admiration. This is why humans are succeeding. You do not waste energy on anger or revenge. You focus on progress. They reached the transport area where Marcus's vehicle waited. Before he departed, Dr. Velnara handed him a small data crystal. This contains contact information for every student who attended today's session. Many of them want to maintain communication with you. Some are interested in internships with human companies. Others simply want to continue learning from you. Marcus accepted the crystal gratefully. Thank you. I will make time for each of them. I know you will, she said. That is another reason why humans are remarkable. You value individual connections even when dealing with thousands of people. The next day, Marcus finally visited the crystalline gardens, the original reason for his journey to Velthara Prime. The gardens were even more spectacular than he had imagined. Structures made from living crystal grew in impossible shapes, reflecting and refracting light to create colors that did not exist in nature. Paths wound through formations that sang softly when the wind passed through them. Marcus walked slowly, taking time to appreciate each unique formation. Other visitors gave him respectful distance, recognizing the medallion around his neck. Guards assigned to protect him stayed at a discreet distance, allowing him privacy while ensuring his safety. He found a quiet spot overlooking a valley filled with crystalline flowers that glowed with bioluminescence. The view was breathtaking, but Marcus was not really seeing it. His mind was processing everything that had happened since his arrival on Velthara Prime. Beautiful, is it not? Marcus turned to find Commander Jalthor standing a respectful distance away. The Veltharan warrior wore simple traveling clothes rather than his armor, and his posture showed none of the arrogance Marcus had first encountered. Commander, I did not expect to see you here. Jalthor moved closer, keeping his 4 hands visible and non-threatening. I leave tomorrow for Earth. Before I go, I wanted to speak with you privately. The Emperor's guards informed me of your location. I hope I am not intruding. Not at all. Please join me. They stood together in silence for a moment, watching the crystal flowers sway in the breeze. Finally, Jalthor spoke. I have spent the past days preparing for my assignment. I have studied human history, culture, philosophy, and achievements. The more I learn, the more ashamed I become of my ignorance. Ignorance is not shameful, Marcus said gently. Willful ignorance is shameful. You are taking steps to educate yourself. That requires courage. Zhalthor's mandibles clicked softly. You are generous with your words. I wanted to tell you what I have learned, what I understand now that I did not understand before. Marcus nodded for him to continue. Humans are survivors, Zhalthor began. Your homeworld has experienced multiple extinction events. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions that blotted out the sun for years. 99% of all species that ever lived on Earth are extinct. Yet humans endured. You adapted when adaptation seemed impossible. He turned to face Marcus directly. That survival instinct is encoded in everything you do. Humans do not give up. When faced with a problem, you try 1,000 solutions until one works. When one approach fails, you immediately try another. This persistence is your greatest strength. Marcus was impressed by the depth of Zhalthor's understanding. Continue. Humans also understand cooperation in ways most species do not, Zhalthor said. On your homeworld, humans were not the strongest predators. You were not the fastest, the largest, or the most dangerous individually, but you learned to hunt in groups, to share knowledge, to build communities. You survived by helping each other. He gestured expansively. The Veltharan Empire was built on the strength of individual warriors. We value personal achievement, individual glory, but humans value collective success. This is why your federations work when our subject worlds chafe under imperial rule. Your colonies want to be part of the network because they benefit from cooperation. Our subject worlds obey because they fear punishment. Marcus felt a surge of respect for the commander. These insights showed genuine understanding, not just surface learning. There is more, Zhalthor continued. Humans have something we call ridiculous optimism. You attempt things that all logic says are impossible. You build settlements on worlds that should not support life. You develop technologies that theoretically cannot work. You negotiate peace agreements between species that have hated each other for millennia. And somehow, often enough, you succeed? He paused, choosing his words carefully. This optimism is not naivety. It is based on your history. Humans have overcome impossible odds so many times that you genuinely believe nothing is truly impossible. This mindset allows you to see opportunities where other species see only obstacles. Marcus smiled. You have learned much in a short time, Commander. Not enough, Zhalthor said humbly. I have barely scratched the surface, but I begin to understand why the Emperor values your friendship, and why he wants me to spend 3 years among your people. Humans have something the Empire has lost, the ability to imagine a better future and the determination to build it. He bowed deeply. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for seeing potential in someone who showed you only hostility. I will honor your gift by becoming a bridge between our peoples. Marcus extended his hand and Zhalthor clasped it firmly. I look forward to hearing about your experiences, Commander. Visit human worlds with an open mind. Ask questions. Challenge your assumptions. Most importantly, make friends. You will find that humans judge individuals by their actions, not by their past mistakes. Zhalthor nodded. I will remember that. As the commander departed, Marcus felt satisfied. The incident at the spaceport had seemed like a disaster at first, but it had created opportunities for real change. One warrior's transformation might seem insignificant in the scope of galactic civilization, but Marcus knew that great changes often began with small moments. He spent the rest of the afternoon in the crystalline gardens, finally able to enjoy them without the weight of recent events. The singing crystals created harmonies that seemed almost intentional, and Marcus found himself humming along. It was peaceful, beautiful, and exactly what he had hoped to find when he first planned this journey. As evening approached, Marcus received a message on his communication device. It was from Emperor Zalmaran, inviting him to a private dinner at the palace. Marcus accepted immediately. He had a feeling this dinner would be about more than just friendship. The Emperor had plans, and Marcus was curious to learn what they were. That evening, in a private dining room overlooking the capital city, Marcus and Emperor Zalmaran shared a meal of exquisite dishes from across the empire. The Emperor had dismissed all servants, wanting complete privacy for their conversation. Your visit has caused quite the stir, my friend, the Emperor said, enjoying Marcus's reaction to a particularly flavorful dish. Marcus considered the Emperor's words carefully. Being used as a political symbol had its dangers, but it also created opportunities. I assume you want something specific from me. Emperor Zalmoran turned to face him, his glowing eyes intense with purpose. I want you to help me build a new framework for galactic cooperation. Not one based on dominance and submission, but on mutual benefit. The Veltheran Empire, human space, and other major civilizations working together on equal footing. That is ambitious, Marcus said, impressed by the scope of the vision. Many of your nobles will resist such changes. They already are, the Emperor acknowledged. But I have time and patience. More importantly, I have an example to point to. You built a commercial empire across hundreds of worlds using exactly the principles I want to implement. Politically, you have proven that cooperation generates more wealth and stability than domination ever could. Marcus walked back to the table and poured himself a glass of Veltharan crystal wine. If I agree to help, we need to be honest about the challenges. There are factions in your empire that will see this as weakness. There are human groups that distrust any partnership with older civilizations. And there are dozens of other species who will want to ensure their interests are protected. I know, the Emperor said, returning to his seat. That is why I need someone who understands all these perspectives. You have built relationships across the galaxy. You understand how different species think, what motivates them, what they fear. You can navigate these complicated dynamics. Marcus took a sip of the wine, appreciating its complex flavor. What about the incident at the spaceport? Do you think that weakens your position or strengthens it? Strengthens it tremendously, the Emperor replied without hesitation. You had every right to demand Jalthor's head. No one would have questioned it. Instead, you showed mercy and turned an enemy into an advocate. That story is being told across the Empire, and each telling reinforces the message I want to send. He leaned forward. The old guard says that cooperation is weakness, that we must maintain our position through strength alone. You demonstrated that there is strength in mercy, power in understanding, and wisdom in turning enemies into allies. Jalthor will spend 3 years learning about humans and will return as a powerful voice for change within the Royal Guard. Marcus nodded slowly. So the incident was not just about one warrior's redemption. It was about showing the entire Empire a different way forward. Exactly. And the timing could not have been better. The Empire faces a choice point. We can continue on our current path and slowly decline into irrelevance. Or we can embrace change and remain a significant force in galactic civilization. Your presence here at this specific moment provides the push needed to choose the latter. They discussed details late into the night. The Emperor envisioned a galactic cooperation council that would include representatives from all major civilizations. Each would have equal voting rights regardless of their military strength or economic power. The council would handle disputes through negotiation rather than force, establish trade standards that benefited all parties, and coordinate responses to galaxy-wide threats. It sounds like the United Nations on Earth, Marcus observed. A noble idea that struggled with implementation because powerful nations refused to give up sovereignty. I have studied your United Nations, the Emperor admitted. It had flaws, but it prevented many conflicts and established precedents for international law. I believe we can learn from both its successes and failures. The key will be making sure powerful civilizations see the Council as beneficial rather than restrictive, Marcus said. They need to understand that cooperation expands opportunities rather than limiting them. Which is where you come in, the Emperor said. You can demonstrate this through your business ventures. Show how joint projects between different species create value that none could achieve alone, make cooperation profitable, and even the most stubborn civilizations will eventually participate. Marcus smiled at the elegant strategy. You want me to make cooperation fashionable. I want you to make it inevitable, the Emperor corrected. The galaxy is becoming too interconnected for the old models to work. Species that refuse to cooperate will find themselves isolated and struggling. Those that embrace cooperation will thrive. I want the Veltheran Empire to lead this transformation rather than resist it. As their dinner concluded, they shook hands as equals, both committed to a vision that would take decades to fully realize. Marcus left the palace knowing that his simple journey to see the crystalline gardens had turned into something far more significant. Over the following weeks, Marcus continued his stay on Velthera Prime. He met with business leaders to discuss joint ventures, spoke at universities about interspecies cooperation, and quietly advised the Emperor on policy matters. Each action reinforced the message that humans and Veltherans could work together as equals. The story of the spaceport incident continued to spread across the galaxy. Some species saw it as Marcus's triumph over Veltheran arrogance. Others viewed it as a lesson in the power of mercy. Human communities celebrated it as proof that their values could succeed even in the most challenging circumstances. Whatever the interpretation, everyone agreed it marked a turning point. 3 months after arriving on Velthara Prime, Marcus finally prepared to depart. Commander Jalthor had already left for Earth, beginning his 3-year journey of learning. Dr. Velnara's students had formed a network dedicated to promoting interspecies understanding. The Emperor had announced the first planning session for the Galactic Cooperation Council, inviting representatives from 50 major civilizations. On his last day, Marcus returned to the Crystalline Gardens one final time. He stood in the same spot where he had spoken with Jalthor, reflecting on how much had changed in such a short time. A single moment of disrespect at a spaceport checkpoint had catalyzed movements that would reshape galactic civilization. Leaving us so soon, Marcus turned to see Dr. Velnara approaching, her robes fluttering in the gentle breeze. I have other places to visit, other work to do, but I will return. The Emperor and I have many plans to discuss. The students ask about you constantly, she said, joining him at the overlook. They want to know when you will speak at the Academy again. Some have already applied for positions with human companies. You have inspired an entire generation. They inspire themselves, Marcus replied. I simply showed them possibilities. They are the ones who will turn those possibilities into reality. Dr. Velnara handed him a small crystal flower, carefully preserved in a stasis field, a gift from the Academy. This flower only grows here in these gardens. It represents something that appears fragile, but is actually incredibly strong. Like the cooperation between our peoples. Marcus accepted the gift with genuine gratitude. I will treasure it, and I will remember what it represents. As he walked back toward the transport that would take him to the spaceport, Marcus reflected on the nature of change. It did not always come through grand gestures or sweeping reforms. Sometimes it came through small moments, a wealthy traveler choosing to travel in plain clothes, a warrior learning humility, a teacher inspiring students to think differently, an emperor finding the courage to question traditions. At the spaceport, the same checkpoint where everything began, a completely different scene greeted Marcus. Royal guards lined up in formation, standing at attention to honor his departure. They wore full ceremonial armor and each saluted as he passed. At the front of the formation stood Jalthor's replacement, a younger officer named Kelthas, Sovereign Trader Chen. Kelthas said formally, "The Royal Guard wishes to express our deepest respect and gratitude. You have taught us lessons we will not forget. You have shown us the strength of mercy and the power of understanding. Safe travels, and may you always find welcome in the Veltheran Empire." Marcus stopped and returned the salute. "Thank you, Officer Kelthas. Continue the work," Commander Jalthor began. "Question assumptions. Seek understanding. Treat every being with respect regardless of their species or status. That is the path to true strength." As his ship lifted off from Velthara Prime, Marcus looked down at the planet that had given him so much more than beautiful gardens. He had arrived as a tourist and left as a catalyst for change. The incident that began with disrespect had ended with mutual respect, and the seeds of a new era in galactic civilization. News networks across the galaxy covered his departure, discussing what his visit meant for the future. Some predicted it would lead to unprecedented cooperation between civilizations. Others warned of the dangers of dismantling traditional power structures. But everyone agreed that something significant had shifted. On Earth, in a modest apartment in Old San Francisco, a young woman named Sarah Chen watched the news coverage with tears streaming down her face. She had not seen her grandfather in 6 months, and she missed him terribly. But she was proud beyond words of what he had accomplished. He had shown the galaxy what humans could be at their best: compassionate, wise, forward-thinking, and absolutely fearless in pursuit of what was right.